Good evening, everyone. We will call this meeting to order. Will the secretary take the roll, please?
Yes. Trustee Fruth.
Here.
Trustee Fairfax.
Here.
Trustee Foss.
Here.
Trustee Rogers.
Here.
Trustee Bloom.
Here.
Trustee Ganguly.
Here.
And Trustee Chakravarti is here.
Excellent. With all board being present, we will proceed to the report of the nominating committee. Trustee Chakravarti.
So we met on Friday, and we as the nominating committee, so that was Christina, Suzanne, and myself. And should we do it by officer, or do you want us to just give you our recommendations?
You can just proceed with the full list of recommendations.
Okay, so our recommendations are as follows. For president, we recommend Matt Fruth. For VP, we recommend Virginia. For secretary, we recommend Suzanne. For finance officer, we recommend Madhurima.
The report of the committee constitutes a motion. Is there a second to accept the report from the committee?
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The report is accepted. Are the individuals named comfortable with those? Those individuals named accept those recommendations and nominations?
Yes.
I'm looking at you. Yes.
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 Okay. And I do accept as well. Is there anyone who will make a motion to the nomination of the named officers from the report?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ted. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Those who vote aye, those in favor of electing those officers as named, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Hearing none. Congratulations. Thank you, everyone. 2 years. Let's go. Next item is the approval of the minutes from our April 25th meeting. Are there any questions regarding those minutes or corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes from April?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Suzanne. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. And the minutes are approved. Just a moment here as we move into see. Make sure I get this correct. So I just want to make sure I get the policy. There it is. Yeah. So, before we begin public comments, we will ask that all public comments be limited to 3 minutes. And we will proceed with in-person public comments and then defer to any online participants. And I did not receive anything written to be read for this public comment period. And this, as a reminder, board members are not obligated to respond to comments from the public during this
Public comment period, issues requiring possible action by the board may be added to future meeting agendas, and issues that can be addressed by the administration will be noted. The public comments submitted in writing will be added to library files in relation to this meeting, but will not necessarily be added to the minutes of the meeting for verbatim messages. Are there any in-person individuals who would like to make a comment?
Hello, everybody. My name is Rory O'Neill. My purpose for speaking tonight is to remind the Oak Park Public Library Board of Trustees that our library's cleaning contract with Alpha Building Maintenance Services comes to an end this August. 10 facts of contracted work that Alpha failed to do can be found in the board-approved meeting minutes of August 2022. Those failures have a minimum value of $35,000. This is now the 5th consecutive month that I've brought that dollar amount to your attention. At the July 2022 board meeting, I described a continuation of the contract with Alpha to be a disservice to the taxpayers of Oak Park. Matt, you read that. I wasn't here myself. If Alpha is awarded yet another contract extension, that will be a slap in the face to the taxpayers whom you represent. That's well worth repeating. If Alpha is awarded another contract extension, that will be a slap in the face of the taxpayers that you folks represent. I respectfully request that next month, which would be the June board meeting, that the Oak Park Public Library Board of Trustees would grant me an additional 3 minutes with which to speak. That would be for a total of 6 minutes to publicly offer my comments on this matter. Please let me know your decision on the additional 3 minutes via email. I respectfully request that this be added to the board meeting minutes. That's all I got to say tonight, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no other, yes, are there any virtual participants who wish to make a comment at this time? Seeing none, we will proceed to trustee comments and board calendar.
I have a question about the Juneteenth parade.
Yes.
Do we need to sign up to show up? We just slap on a shirt and. Stephen?
Chibuke Enya is the community engagement manager, and he's gonna be running both parades this year for the libraries. It would be great if you could sign up, but since you just mentioned it, I will be happy to add your name and anyone that would like to bring to this spreadsheet so that you can continue to get communication about where you need, when, and if you're doing both in the sponsors.
And I have a question about a day in our village. I have a question about a day in our village.
Hi.
How long do you want board members there and how? Because I'm just, there are other groups that I might be.
Absolutely.
You want to come up to?
Sure. So for Day in Our Village, I know some of you have RSVP'd for the elected officials brunch, which is 9:30 to 10:30 in this room. Then at 10:30, we're going to offer anyone who's interested a quick tour, if you haven't yet seen it, of the Creative Studio. Because we also have a tentative confirmation from LaShawn Ford, who was essential in getting the grant funded money that helped pay for the sound booth, if I'm correct. Yes, thank you for nodding, Lori. And so we want to publicly thank him as well as give him a quick tour of the space. So not everyone who's at the brunch would also be invited upstairs to take a peek at some of the new equipment and meet with John G, who's supervising librarian of that creative space and has all the knowledge about how all the things work. For the booth time, which is going to run from 11 to 4, we have 2, maybe 3 staff members who will be available in the booth throughout that time period. You are more than welcome to come whenever you want. I will be happy to talk with you one-on-one or to share with the board the full plan. This is what's going to be in the booth. This is the activities that we plan to use to engage people. Here's the gifts, etc. So whatever works for your schedule, except it would probably be tough if everyone came at 11 since you're all here because of the brunch. So
I will come later in the afternoon.
thank you. That's amazing. And yeah, so you are welcome to do whatever works for you.
And what support do you want for Day in Our Village from us and when?
We'd announced previously that we would use the booth, and one of the main activities would be to host a community list, sidewalk talk listening session. So Jocelyn has been running these since April. This will be the first one in June. That is a series of questions. Make it sound long, but really it's just kind of a conversation about, oh, do you live in Oak Park? Do you attend library programs? Oh, can I ask you a couple more questions about that? That's the plan. So in terms of what role you may or may not want to have when you're in the booth, you can have a set of those, kind of questions and have those dialogues with people when they stop by, or you could just be there to engage in any way that you see fit. So the booth itself, usually, it's kind of tight. So I'd say having more than 4 people at one time in the booth might be tricky. I'm happy to keep track if you want to say, oh, I might stop by between 3 and 4. Or I want to come between noon and 2 or whatever, and we can write it out and have it available so that you all can choose what works best for you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Jody, you're right next to Friends
Yes.
again this year, so Friends has a booth and then we have a booth. And we haven't really done that much interaction between the two of us.
It's true. It's true. The Friends will be giving away books again in the booth this year, as well as promoting what would be the 50th fair, which will be at the main library June 14th through 16th. July 14th through 16th. So they'll be promoting that as well as giving away books to anyone who is donated books, not giving away library books, to anyone who stops by their booth. We have invited the Friends to march with us in both the Juneteenth and the July 4th parade. And I was just talking today with Chet Taranowski, who's going to be managing that for the Friends. And he was really excited about it. And they were going to invite everyone and let us know, same spreadsheet business. So, who's potentially going to be where when. One new thing about the parades is I heard that we're gonna be renting a truck this year. So if you're looking to ride versus have to walk all the way there and back, that might be a bonus.
Are we decorating
This is what I've heard as well. Yes, there's some ideas in the works. And potential music too, which has also been a request, I think, in the past too.
last year?
Yeah.
My husband was like that and brought his Bluetooth thing. So yeah, that would be nice. If you need help decorating, let us know.
Oh, okay, definitely.
I'll plan to be a Juneteenth day in the village. I'm out of town, but I wonder, how does the barbecue get scheduled? Like
It's a good question.
Last year I remember it was full, but this year I think it was just determined that it was that day.
My understanding was the Park District, Jan Arnold specifically had managed the barbecue, the brunch, and I haven't heard anything about the barbecue, but we can follow up and get back to you on that.
I'm just curious.
Okay.
Jody, did you want to say anything about the farmer's market?
Yes, thank you. There was a request to try to find a great date for most or all, if you wanted to have a booth sponsored by the village at the Saturday farmer's market. And the manager of that space is like, just let me know when you want to come. We can provide a booth, table, chairs, whatever else you need. So I had sent out a doodle poll because it was open at this point, whenever you want to go. I don't know the best process of the doodle poll, or there's another way to kind of narrow it down. Maybe we can decide what month you want to go and then kind of narrow down on the Saturdays within that month. We have till October.
And you had asked for just 3 dates, right?
Right, so I think last I checked, and I apologize because I didn't check today, but I know Ted and Suzanne, you had put some options in there for when would be possible for you, for when would be
On
open.
Doodle, like it was, you had to like click on the see more to see the 3 dates. So I think. yeah,
Got it,
so just
okay.
Bringing that up, people go on.
Yeah,
All you have to do
technology.
is 3 dates, which makes it easier.
Would there be a best day with the summer reading program and all of that, where we could generate interest
Ooh,
there?
June 1st is when summer reading officially kicks off for all 3 age groups. Kids 2 to 11, middle and high school, and adults, which is kind of a new return this year. So what would be best? I'm not sure. I'm gonna guess like a post 4th of July if you were up for it, because we are gonna have the opportunity to, be in the community in June through the parade, early July with the parade, so maybe August or getting closer. That could be an option. But in terms of summer reading, it would be, kind of now. I don't know, Lori, if you have thoughts on that one?
That sounds,
All right.
any other questions? I think Jody can speak to all of these calendar.
Jody's the calendar lady.
We should just complete the whole ASAP for the farmer's market.
Sure, and
Yeah.
just email me if any of you are like, it has to be in June, because I can't do July and August. Okay, great. I know, Matt, you'd also mentioned trying to schedule a weekend date for maybe a half day strategy, so I don't know if that, that might be a consideration in terms of the dates as well, which is not reflected on the doodle poll.
But there also was, I think. Yeah, like conference was in there.
It's the end of, yes, end of June, and it's over a weekend, so last weekend in June, I believe.
So like one of the dates that's on there is
Right, probably not the best.
probably.
What time do you need to get ready before the trains? Should I?
Is that?
Usually, oh yeah, that's okay. No, not at all. I don't think that we put it out. Usually between like maybe 9:30 and 10. I think both parades start at 10. But often, we request that everybody kind of show up by 9:30, 9:45. I think they both start and stop at the same place. Start near Longfellow Park and end up near the Dole Branch at Augusta and Kyler. So it's about a 2-mile, right? Is that right? About 2-mile walk. Which,
Not well shaded.
thank you. Yes, you welcome those people who have the hoses out in their front yard and will spray you when you're walking down. So something to keep in mind, yeah, if it's really warm. I know there were some 4th of July parades were really warm. We try to have water, but it's always great to bring your own, and a hat. So it's great.
And it's fun hanging out for at least the Juneteenth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting there early is fine. Because you get to meet staff that you haven't met before, see people you didn't have. So.
Great.
Sure.
Moving on, let's go to the executive director's report. She is not here. Are there any questions? So unless anybody has anything they want to specifically bring up, we will move on to staff reports. Starting with strategic priorities.
A lot of great content in the report this month. I'd just like to point out, the disability awareness field trips, so this is something that we haven't reported on before. It's a new idea in the children's services area, and it's been very popular, with D97 teachers and the kids who've had the tours. Also, Billy's here, he can answer questions if you have any about the staff retention and turnover report. Also the older adults section talks about the programming that we're doing for older adults, but also the communication strategy, which is been very well received, the emails and now the printed calendar, which, we started at the recommendation of some, seniors who've been advising Jocelyn about, how to highlight older adults programming. I think that's all been well received. Any questions?
I just think it's remarkable, like seeing the turnover be less than half than it was. Like, I think that speaks to all the hard work of making folks like turn more full-time positions, the better compensation. So I'm just really happy to see that. It's so good.
Great, thank you.
I know this was part of like the overall priorities of the library, the staff retention, but do we feel like the anti-racism framework that we put in had any assistance or reflection on keeping this turnover lower? Billy?
Thank you.
Not to put you on the spot, sorry, but
The short answer is I think so. I mean, it didn't hurt. I think there's two things that are working together that are helping to reduce turnover, increase retention. And that's, yes, the equity and anti-racism work. I mean, all the different pockets of, that's affecting and impacting our library. And specifically with when Stephen started in his role, it was 2 years ago, two years ago, and really took I think when he was hired, we thought we'd have more external facing, but actually a lot of the work has been more internal, focusing on staff. So that's helped. So that's one thing I think it's helping, and also our focus on staff well-being, and that's an all-encompassing, very large item to tackle as well. And there's many facets of staff well-being, and I don't think that equity and anti-racism and staff well-being are like there's a lot of intersectionality, and so I think are a lot of intersections, and I feel like our focus on both of them have influenced these numbers.
The reason I ask is sometimes in the community when people are asking like, well, what does your anti-racism initiative do? And I have lots of quantitative things to tell them, but I think this is the first really quantitative thing that I would be able to show people in the community and say, like, this is how when you integrate an anti-racism framework into what you're doing, it can have an impact on actual percentages and numbers, and in a way that people can grasp it. So that's why I was asking. It's nice to sort of, I know what work everyone has been doing, and like you said, part of the anti-racism framework purpose was that it's not supposed to be separated from anything else that we're doing. But it's nice to be able to present the community with a number that says, like, we decided these things were priorities. This is how it led to us looking at and addressing our staffing needs, and this is something that's happened in part because of it. So
yeah, I feel very fortunate to be here working at this library with these initiatives going on. From an HR perspective, it makes it really easy to attract staff with more applications and more qualified applicants, people who are seeking out this library and apply to this library because of what our website is saying, what our website is saying about who we are. And then once they're hired, they're also staying, so, and decreasing that turnover. So I think Lori and I were talking about how this isn't every library, and this is not every library's experience, but I'm positive that because of these initiatives, we're having this positive experience here. It also helps being in a wonderful community in Oak Park, right next to Chicago. Yeah.
It was nice, like a lot of us went to this banquet on Friday with trustees across northern Illinois, and like a lot of people approached me anyway, and it's like, we're like, oh my God, it's amazing that you do X, Y, Z, and I I don't know, like a lot of other libraries are getting attention for not great things, so it's really nice to hear. Just that, yeah, people are recognizing what you all are doing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lily.
We also have the core statistics and, one thing I asked questions about was like, why did the numbers drop in April? I was like, what was different from March? And I asked my team, they said, well, in March we had the Steve Fest and that drew 600 people. That was one. So there were some big programs. One Earth Film Festival drew a lot of people in March. So we dropped a little from our average. And it's not always about the numbers, but I wanted to just be able to explain that because that jumped out at me. Similarly, there's a jump in community outreach and the book bike is back, more programming in the community. So that's what we're seeing. The surge should continue to climb over the summer months.
When do we get our new book bike?
Do we have it here? The electric bike, is it here?
Next year.
Oh, okay. We're all anxious. I want to wrap.
Any questions or comments regarding the statistics?
Was the drag story time in March? Or was that April?
And
It was-
That was in March too. Yeah, I feel like that has such a high demand. I mean, it was completely booked.
Just problem with all that stuff in March.
I don't know. Are there more plans to do more of this?
I think so. They're regular children's event.
It's been very popular.
I know that we had some comments before the event. Do we have any resistance reported afterwards?
Afterwards, we had a call the day before. That was a little unnerving, so I came that day just to make sure. I was concerned there might be some actual protesting on the day, but it all worked. And you were there too, right?
No, it was, well, I think I had COVID that weekend anyway. So I had some illness, but I also tried to book before I got sick and it was completely. So,
Yeah, it was very on that day and well attended, but yeah, so nothing after.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
And then we have our additions in our staff reports, additions, terminations, and staff changes. I did appreciate the Sasquatch. Any questions? Sure. Move on to financial reports.
Jeremy is at a conference, and so if you have any questions, I'm happy to take notes and get answers. I don't know that I'll be able to address your questions. I'll try, but I'm not sure.
For those who aren't super familiar with how the tax revenue cycles, it is usual for us to get 50% of our property tax revenue already, because that's the way the property tax bills come. So it is, we are not on pace to exceed 100% of that, but we are at about where we should be for this time of year for that. Any other questions anybody has that they would like to follow up? You have staff follow up with? Okay. Then we will move on to.
No, I lied. I do have one thing I want to.
Sure. Go ahead.
The heating and cooling costs, I know those are two things that might pinch a little bit this year, what with natural gas being up during the winter and us running with one and shadow right now. I don't know where I saw that. I don't know that.
Yeah, page 32.
Is that something you could address, the HVAC, expenses?
I see that we've expended
Yeah.
75%
gas
of
is-
natural gas. Is that what you were talking about, Rachel?
Yeah, that we're at 75% on natural gas and then only equipment, well, that'll be capital for next year, but I don't know where air conditioning lives on here.
So the natural gas expense is up. The cost went up, I think, a little bit higher than we had originally anticipated. And we had a couple of extended power outages where the building ran on generator power for an extended amount of time, and that's a natural gas generator. So we consumed a fair amount of gas to keep the building running during it was out. One of them was election day. Actually. Yes. There were a lot of combat issues. So we ran on natural gas for, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it was a while. So expenditure on gas should taper down for a little bit for the summer. But we will have to do some investigating and see where
Depending
we're
on
at.
when real winter starts again.
Correct.
We might be over 100% of our
Correct.
budget for that for this year.
And then what about the cooling side? There was a question about
It's just the same question, because I think we're running on one right now.
so we have one chiller shut down. We're running on one, and currently we have the capacity to cool everything running on one chiller. And that's just something we're going to continue to monitor as the summer goes along. We're expected to get the chiller August for delivery. When we signed the purchase agreement in November, I believe it was a 44-week lead time. So yeah, so we're running on, fingers crossed that the one running chiller holds up through the summer and everything goes well. So that's what we're hoping on. But when it does come in August and gets put in place, we'll be back to full capacity and have built-in redundancy.
Are we expending any additional electricity running the one?
No.
Okay. Just taxing it a little bit more.
Yep, yeah, we're putting the full load is now on one machine instead of spreading that over two.
Has there been an exploration of solar?
So it's my understanding that solar energy had been kind of looked at before, when Jeremy was looking at it, and I could follow up with him to see where exactly we landed on that. It is nothing that has been talked of recently, because of, if I remember correctly, there was a tremendous outlay, and since we're part of the power consortium for the village, we don't recover that cost. So solar panels would be all outlay without ever recovering.
Right, okay. I know things have changed for residential, because Illinois is behind government TV.
Yeah.
So there's the incentives, I get text messages every day from various folks about residential. And so I didn't know if anything changed.
No.
So I think
And I think my recollection, well, there's that financial piece of that, I believe there was also an issue of the trade-off on the roof versus some of the green roof space and the amount of square footage that would need to be utilized for it to be viable. The trade-off at the time, I think the Jeremy and David didn't think that it was in the interest of the initiatives, like the green roof that we
right,
had.
and I'm just wondering if something has changed since then, because things have changed for residential with trying to get caught up in it. I just don't know.
Well, I think it's a matter of square footage. I don't think it wasn't a matter of the cost. It was a matter of the square footage that would need to be occupied on the roof I believe this village sustainability manager at the time also said that it wasn't necessarily in our interests to do so, that the benefits of the green roof for heat dissipation and that management was better for us than capturing solar, especially since we are on the village consortium. And we actually, because if you notice in our budget, we don't have a line item for power. We don't have a line item for electrical. It comes on all of our electrical bills. So there is, there's definitely an environmental piece to it as an example, but in terms of how that will impact what we do, it's kind of just our impact on that, financially and everything is so dispersed amongst the village and all of the other municipalities in that consortium. The impact would be marketing, and PR for the most part. From my recollection of the conversation there, the benefit for us wasn't hugely there, but we can definitely.
We'll just see if anything's changed.
Yeah.
I mean, with that, I'm assuming all that's the same for the other two branches as well. I understand the trade-off of the green roof here, but neither of those have a green roof, but they have a less roof. So.
Well, and the dole is run by the park district. So, but they are, the park district is doing solar and I know they have a plan to continue to do solar geothermal with additional buildings that they own and manage. So there might be something that we see tangentially through that, at all, but not directly.
And I think certainly through the new community recreation center, which is now zero. That they now wouldn't run on natural gas if the solar goes out, because they've got generators that the solar actually puts into the
That's
generator.
exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, and
What's the-
so they're working with that, and I think that Planet Green is on top of this, and I think that iGov and Luann's son is very much involved with all of this. So it is something that I think is on the radar.
It's worth investigating.
Especially if we're having to replace something like the, God forbid, our generator poops out because we've used it for as much as we did, why not replace it with something that's maybe more people.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. We'll move into the disbursements journals, which begin on page 34. Goes to page 58. Are there any questions regarding any of the transactions on the journals? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Virginia, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Suzanne. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of approving say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? It is approved. Move into additional reports. Intergovernmental iGov.
So I know, the main event in May was the, navigating the new public square. That was a presentation by Julie and Flynn. And some of us attended that, and I think there was some valuable information. And then there was a brief follow-up meeting just to get feedback mostly about that event and what might be done differently next time. So nothing more to report.
On iGov, I believe that iGov would like to have 2 representatives from the library, and I think we have only Suzanne at this point, correct?
Yes, Colleen was the other representative, so
So they would like to have a second representative from the library. Because that's.
And when is that taking place? Like, when are we deciding that again?
and that will be part of the SIF. Going into this with as we concluded additional reports, I was going to ask who would like to be our representatives for iGov and for the Friends going forward, as we now have a new board. And the opportunity for people to take on new interests and responsibilities over the next 2 years. So think briefly, and of course, if you can, you want to think about it after tonight and think about how much more time you'd like to commit to our lovely community. You can let me know after tonight. Yes.
So Matt, are you asking for volunteers then at this point?
Yes,
Because I would be happy to serve on the IGO.
Okay.
I would also be interested.
Okay.
Fine, I think it'd be great to have some continuity from the board.
Okay. All right, take that under advisement. COG was canceled and rescheduled for June 7th. Management Green. Planet Green.
I'm sorry?
Planet Green.
Oh, Planet Green. Neither Matt nor I was able to attend last Thursday's meeting because I never got the Zoom invitation for some strange reason. And then Matt had a problem with a conveyor belt here at the library. But I do have the agenda for that meeting. I have copies for everybody on the board. And I think this will be very helpful. Also, if you go onto the Planet Green website, their 2021 work plan is really very comprehensive and very interesting. So I commend that to you. And we talk about things like energy and sustainability. I think that Planet Green really is an organization you need to listen to. So I've got these for everybody. And sorry, Gary Corneen, who's running this, has not been good about getting back to me.
Thank you, Ted. Friends of the Library.
I am good. That's a you, right? You wanna? I don't know what else to share with you on the book sale. So yeah, well, they are focused on the book sale, and they also spent time on their volunteer strategy. They were the day after the Friends meeting, there was the first volunteer training. And I heard that they had 58 people show up for that. So there's a lot of interest. Everyone's very excited about the fair being on all 3 floors and working out the logistics. They spent a lot of time on the pricing of the materials. And so it was pretty much devoted to fair details. So June 1, the donations start. Okay. So
I was just with the.
Yeah.
I believe Jocelyn and I were at the opening of the community rec center on Thursday when many of the board were all at a fancy party.
On
But-
Friday? Yeah, Friday.
But Jocelyn has some ideas about the future of the Friends and possibility of a foundation and community foundation. And I think that this will be a really interesting conversation we'll have in the coming months.
Excellent.
Are we expecting any specific type of donations that the Friends need? Like any genre of book that is particularly not that I'm trying to strategically purge?
I don't know. I think the fiction is always one of the best movers. So yeah, that's fiction. But I off the top of my head, I can't think. Can you remember them saying anything about genre?
I mean, I think from my own experience, like the children's books.
Oh, well,
go
yeah.
Fast. But
And I have.
But,
And speaking of friends and fundraising, Justin also mentioned that we just had $130,000 gift that's come into the library through a benefaction, and it's going to go through the community foundation. And so we can begin to think about those kinds of things too, because friends in different organizations work in different ways. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
I have a question that's kind of related to committees, I guess generally, just like if there's another community group. Does it, like, how do we determine what committees we participate in?
Well, typically, IGov is, a
Like I got,
communication and collaboration or group that is constituted by request of two, to
right,
have two members from everybody. We have, I believe the library has like, ex officio, positions on the board, like members of, like as designated representatives from our library board. Are members there, so like we
Right.
designate who those folks are. In the past, we've also, I believe been requested by the collaboration,
oh yeah.
but we have not had a designee, for some years. We're always happy to work with them and everything, but I think I don't know if they are still interested in having a designee from us.
Sure, I am kind of talking to Shannon on a regular basis. I guess I just asked because I feel like it's what we have is, like, when I think about Planet Green, that's like the sustainability, but then as a community, we're always trying to also, like, especially as a library that's dealing with a lot of anti-LGBT stuff, like, wouldn't it be nice if there was a committee and I'm not dreaming up of it. I'm just kind of wondering, like, aloud what we could do to engage youth and then maybe something around LGBT stuff.
Like, are there other places that maybe you don't know to ask for our participation?
Yeah.
I am more, if you hear of anything, or know of a group that you think we could be a bit more, we could have a more directed, relationship with in terms of engagement, I'm all for it. Let's bring it to the table and talk it through. If there's a group that you just want to, that you know of and you want to go and say, and bring stuff back to the board to share, go nuts.
Okay.
I don't want to stop anybody from engaging with other parts of the community to try and bring ideas back here for us to collaborate and work with other organizations in the community. I think that's great. So, just bring it back here before you start committing resources and staff time.
Right.
We do have a staff member, Jennifer Norberg, goes in collaboration, but in the past, we did have a board member and.
And those are during the day, I think, too.
But yeah, celebration.
That may have been part of the stuff, sending board members to
I
people.
do know that Paga has started doing more, like, community engagement work, and, they've always had scholarships and fundraising for that, and they're starting to do some more work in the community, so just social.
Sure.
We should also be thinking about, we said stuff, so I feel like we should also be thinking about what would be appropriate for the board to participate in versus stuff, and there might actually be a lot of relationships already in. Do you know what I mean? Like, there might be
Already existing.
because they're part of like operationalizing processes that
Yeah.
are not necessarily, or that are on a day-to-day basis that may not come up.
Yeah, that's true.
So-
So I think it also informs the decisions we make and like what populations we're listening to, you're kind of elevating. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I hear you. That makes sense.
I love the idea of youth. I love the idea of having a formal avenue to really listen to youth voices in this community. So I think that's a nice. I think they agree with that.
But I also realized there's only 7 of us, and like we already have 4, so. Fun to kind of ask that question, because I've been thinking about, yeah, what community representation, or, what committee representation. we're thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess I meant, just to be clear, Christina, I think I meant like, we should check with staff to see what they're already doing and see how we can like emphasize those voices and the work that's being done, you know, so obviously like the
Right,
youth
like the
services
team.
coordinator and
Yeah,
other
the team, yeah,
you know, and
there's so much happening there.
so that,
I've been here a little bit, sitting near the team area, and it was just so heartening. To like hear, it's just,
It's not like a library.
it's not the library. So, yeah, absolutely. You have great connections, and I think the library is seen as a place where you know, so, yeah, how we can connect. And maybe that's, you know, something to volley to Jocelyn and the leadership teams. How do you bring those ideas together? Yeah.
Because it's also like, maybe ideally a little bit of a pipeline to board participation too, like if we can be more out there, I think. I don't know, it would be really cool to see someone like in a youth group and maybe decide to run for office and join the board, so I think it'd be really cool.
Absolutely.
That's the person who started as a youth.
Yeah. You-ish.
Yeah, wait, what? They went through at the banquet asking how many years people have been trustees. And we went through and went through and went through, and then at the very end. Over 20 years.
With like 3 other people.
did you want to stand and yell?
And then additional reports, just a follow-up, didn't make the agenda because there wasn't really any kind of progress, per se. But I did send to LaShawn Ford's office 2 versions of language related to library compensation. One was a simple strike and replace of the current language in the statute. Says that trustees shall not be compensated. It struck out shall not and replaced it with may, so basically trustees may be compensated. They didn't provide much else. It is, I include the note, it is modeled after another bill that was filed this session related to the Chicago School Board by another one who, you know, who basically made the same edit for that statute. So the Chicago School Board, I'm like, hey, if you're considering paying school board members, maybe also library trustees. And the other submission, which was a bit more technical, was lifted and edited from the municipal code of state law, dictating that you can compensate. If you do compensate, you have to set what those rates are at least 180 days out from the election of which those seats will be up, so that it is, you know, people know when, you know, it will be in effect and what it will be when they go to vote. Is my guess in the justification for setting it out that date, and also to keep trustees from getting elected and immediately raising their own pay. Who would ever do that? So those were the 2, I sent those in 2 versions to his office. Well, along with the note was, I know you're in the final weeks of session. I will not take it personally if these are not filed, you know, immediately before you guys finish a budget. So, but when he is here for the day in our village, I will
I will, grab him for a few minutes, as well on that.
I think it's heartening that it's as far as it is, having 2 years until the next election, because I'm wondering what it will change for library elections for us to open the pool of people who could participate. So I'm glad we have a lot of lead time to hopefully get this done so that we can expand the pool.
Yeah. And thank you to Matt and Christina for your work on this. Really appreciate it.
Very well. Going into unfinished business, we do not have any minutes from closed meetings to approve. Well, there was the concept, like compensation legislation, holidays and schedule building closing policy, the draft survey. We have before us the draft of the survey. I think. Both of these questions seem comprehensive to me, to what we're kind of trying to see what people's priority areas. Were these going to be ranked or just checkboxes next to the options? Do we know?
I don't know. Do you have a preference?
I have some general comments first before we get into the nitty gritty. For one thing, I think it'll be really good to have this. If we move this ball forward at all, we'll do it when Justin's here. Just nothing against you, but just because she's been a big part of the conversation. And I also think we're not ready to move forward. As far as this survey, I think some of what, when I opened the can of worms, was that's not kind of addressed in this is trying to rethink and just look at something that hasn't been examined from what it says about priorities and how we value. And then it gets into the kind of the nitty gritty of what days do people want off. So I'm wondering if there might be a way to do something like one of the more circle approach, where we have a conversation and staff can come to it, just something to, to think about. And I would want to, touch base with Jocelyn and Stephen about doing something like that, so that we can get kind of more at the richer conversation around it, in addition to kind of like what days are we closed. The other thing is that in this, I think the introduction outline, like how we got here, why we're asked, all that is so critical. And it just seems kind of a little bit. So I would like to see more of that.
I don't.
Before we moved anything.
I'm not comfortable wordsmithing a survey to staff.
I'm not wordsmithing a survey to staff.
But you're talking about like how we got here, so far we're asking. I don't know that is like what
I'm not
benefit is.
suggesting wordsmithing, I'm just saying that I think that's an important piece.
Okay.
And so looking at the survey without it, I don't feel like we're anywhere ready to move forward without knowing kind of that. Just because it's representing. Yeah, just to see it, so that if it's representing to staff why the board raised this and what the concerns are. That's all.
I feel like this is a thing that the staff wants. If we wanted to write it, then the board should have asked to write it, not ask staff to do it.
I never said that I wanted to write it. I said that I'm not seeing how we got here and why we were asking. Because I think, and given that I'm the one who started the idea and kind of opened the can of worms, I'm just saying, I'd just like to see like how we got here and why we're asking is. I'm not saying that I'm gonna like put commas in or edit it.
You're just saying that
I feel like
because it's an outline rather than the introduction as I feel
It
like
might
might
be
be intended to be presented. You'd
I
like
feel
to
like
see
that's
that.
the critical piece. Is the. I feel like some of the ideas are missing. In this, we're missing each other, we're crossing paths. So, yeah, I'm not suggesting that I would write anything for staff, and I absolutely support. Jocelyn and leadership staff in running the library. We were asked to approve a set of holidays earlier or at the end of last year, and I raised the question of how these holidays were structured around kind of historically centered populations and holidays, and to take a step back and take a look at that. And I think we made some good progress on that, in terms of some of the holidays that we added. So,
Yeah, and this, I think to your point, like the survey is more so asking like, what other holidays are you interested in? And that's not so much, I think, what our conversations were about. Like if this is the survey we're gonna send out, I don't expect to glean much or like be able to, so I hear you, Suzanne. I think I'm struggling with this too, and I'm almost at the point of just like wanting to pause it and yeah.
I think a pause would be a good idea, because we've made, I do think we made some progress. Both in terms of these larger ideas of what we're putting forth as what we value. And as far as the data that we got about usage and meeting some of those needs and I think we have made some good progress, and I think it might be a good place to put a pause in it and revisit it.
I don't know that I mind a pause, but I would say you mentioned sitting down and having a conversation. I know that a lot of people where I work would not feel comfortable with that, and that's a lot of what I heard in the comments before. I think one of the reasons we've heard a lot of comments we weren't expecting, and one of the reasons I wanted something that was a little bit more broad and somewhat anonymous was I'm wondering if people who do not feel comfortable sharing their opinions are not sharing their opinions because it's in a verbal context where they are not comfortable.
That's an excellent point.
So
I was just trying to get it out of.
yeah,
As somebody who liked to get the process piece in there, and then how we got here and why we're.
Because it's such a complex
Contextualized.
discussion, like
Yes.
we've seen, and so I think to review it through a survey is really hard, and yeah, I'm really stuck on this, and I think I don't know what to do next. I think we started off with kind of a philosophical discussion of like, why are we, a place of belonging, but then we're adhering to very white dominant culture with our holidays. And then it turned into kind of more of like, well, actually, we don't have many days off for staff. And so we added a few, and I'm just not sure the direction we've taken is what the intention was. I'm glad we gave staff more days off, but I do recognize that's not how it all started.
I mean, that might be something that we have to square as a board, which I don't know, I'm not answering this, but which is the thing that we're trying to solve, making sure that our people have enough days off, or making sure they have the correct right balance, whatever we want to say, days off. And can we do both of those things simultaneously, or do we have to take small bites and do one and then the other?
There's a lot of, I think, conflicting desires out of this, because one of them also is being open for marginalized communities on days that they are not welcome almost anywhere. And so I think that's another tension, and yeah, there's just a lot of tension.
It's complex, I mean.
Yeah. And I don't think the survey that I'm seeing can answer those complexities. So maybe the survey idea was a bad one. I don't know. I was trying to think of questions I might ask, and I had a hard time. So I'm just kind of stuck.
But I appreciate you bringing up the idea of like
Yes,
sitting down and anonymity. It was more like
I would really like us not to abandon something that allows folks to
right,
respond without the pressure of their peers. Because in the circle context that we talked about, not only were they with their peers, but they were reporting something to their superior, who will then be taken to their superiors, which will then,
Yeah.
that's a lot for somebody who maybe doesn't.
and it's some of that I was trying to get away from, but to your point, might actually make it worse. So,
I would like us to figure out a way to do something, because we've had something in the more out loud form. I'd like to have something that is in a form where people maybe who weren't comfortable participating there are a little bit more comfortable participating. And plus, I feel like everybody who works everywhere is pretty used to getting a happiness survey of some sort. It kind of falls into the, rote things that you do because you work in a place. And so people might be more likely and more comfortable to respond, especially if we do in that introduction, remind them like things are anonymous. It's all, randomized. And if you are the only person of this ethnicity, we still won't be able to figure out who you are because how the data is aggregated and, things like that. So that people feel comfortable expressing the, outline thing that we're trying to get at that they might not express because they do feel like they're very, very minority.
right, and it's tricky to get the balance so that it's
And
also more qualitative. Or like more,
it's a
Yeah.
complex topic, and I think like I'm scared
Moving
too
on
that
to
we're
that.
gonna get like, what if we get really high numbers for, I don't know. Like Easter or something, and then, wait, did we already sign off on that? No.
No.
But I think like that's also like, what do we do with, oh yeah, Easter's number 4. Because the whole thing is we're trying to push against that dominant culture, and if we do a survey, like now I'm thinking about what the unintended consequences are.
Let me ask this question. What if like we did a random community survey, we did, like a professional survey of the community and our staff. And it came back that what they wanted us to do by overwhelming margins across all demographics was stuff like Easter, Mother's Day, Father's Day. What's that?
Right, like.
Because it's like, if we're, just because the response from the community isn't what we expect.
Yeah.
And isn't like what we thought was gonna be there, doesn't validate it. It doesn't, it's like, so I think I myself was surprised by some of the responses from the staff.
did anybody read the responses from the staff from the bottom up? Because it might be worth doing that and see how it feels differently. Because I'm not wanting to dismiss anybody's responses. I'm just saying, when I read them in the other direction, I felt different. So, and yeah, I just think there's kind of a crossing of ideas here. And majority isn't necessarily always the route.
I worry about.
We don't even know that that's what it is until we have it in front of us, like. I'm not saying we're borrowing trouble and like maybe we don't have to borrow it, maybe it really is here, but like. We don't know that that's what we're tackling until we hear back from the staff.
But what is the best way to hear from the staff is the question. In the complex, like multifaceted way of the topic instead of
Yeah.
like a.
I mean, we heard back one way. My opinion is we heard in a way where people who are comfortable speaking in large groups felt comfortable to speak. I would like to make sure that we are asking the question in a way where people who may not have felt as comfortable for whatever reason in that situation feel comfortable to speak. And then I don't think we just like chuck out the first batch of responses. I think then we look at it all together
And I appreciate that.
and see where it
goes. Because basically, I think that's really important to give people different ways to communicate about something like this. I just would like it to be less. Or to be more, have more room for. Nuanced, rich voice from the people who are not comfortable speaking in a large group, instead of just a check the boxes, if that makes sense.
I mean, there's a.
And that's why I was
space
saying
for
the introductions seem important.
Well, if I mean, sorry, but I think that what we're talking about maybe a couple of different things at the same time, because this is a complex issue. And one thing that we're talking about is the mode of delivery of the survey mechanism. So like making sure that it gets to people and people are able to respond. You may not have felt comfortable speaking up, and I think what Suzanne, what you're trying to talk about is like, excuse me, the actual feedback that we solicit. And the thing is that we've had a very complex discussion, but we haven't had, thank you, we haven't had a discussion with staff, which is where I think your instinct comes from. That like if this survey were coming at the end of like the longer conversation, right? Like if we had a conversation and then people felt like that there was a way that they could deliver an anonymous response, that it would feel that that we were able to explain that we're not looking to take away Santa Claus or whatever, you know, we're not trying to like steal all your favorite people, but we're trying to do it. And I think, do I understand that impulse correctly? And I also see what you're saying. This is so unhelpful when people say, I see both sides, but like. I appreciate that. Right. But that's right. I think that what we're trying to say is that it needs, I mean, to go back to Matt's first question, which was, or point about not wordsmithing the introduction, I guess I'm not really sure how, like, a request to see a fleshed out introduction speaks to some of the context that we've been trying to build is really any different from the question that Lori asked us, which is, do we want to see a ranking or choice of the question? Do you know what I mean? Like that's nitty gritty. That's like going into the details of the survey. And I think that if that's not wordsmithing, then I don't think that.
Well, I think, yeah, I think that was prompted from my question saying, is this or that? Because all it did was list them. I didn't know if it was ranked or just a pick off because it wasn't clear. And she said, like, well, is that something you want? And I'm like, fine with either option. I didn't know how the staff who built that had put it together.
I appreciate that. What I'm trying to say is that I guess I actually think that like what kind of question these are is valid. Like, you know, you say ranking and like the last thing I think I want to see is where people think Martin Luther King Jr. holiday should go in a.
They're having to make it hierarchy.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So we're saying that the modality of the question, the structure of the question, like is relevant to this, is a relevant representation of the spirit that we're hoping to convey. Like we're not trying to get people to just do one or whatever. And you know, so if we're thinking about this thing as not just soliciting questions, but also announcing an intent from the board, then I think that's what we should be thinking about, is that so that the introduction piece or the scaffolding around it, we want to make sure that we're not just announcing like. So I understand, I think the need to be careful and keeping in mind the things that you're saying. I guess the thing that I come back to is that I'm not sure. I'm not against a pause. I just, is this a pause because we're like, this topic is a little hot right now. So we need to all step up, which is also not a reason to not do it, but like, is it that it's a little something there's no urgency, we need to like step back a little bit and, you know, regroup and rethink, or is this just a pause that we're like,
escaping the topic because it makes us uncomfortable, you know, like, oh, well, maybe escaping a topic doesn't.
Can I ask? I have a question. I think staff want the federal holidays and they want four floating holidays. This is what we heard. What is your objection to that?
The objection to the four floating holidays?
So
And this medical.
the staff have shared to management and leadership team that they want the federal holidays and they want four floating holidays. Is there a reason not to have that?
I think, and you guys can correct me if I misinterpret, I think the reason for the discussion was that we don't want people to feel like they have to use their floating holidays for religious or cultural holidays for which other people have those holidays granted already in the calendar. So not wanting to have to use your floating holiday for Eid when everybody already gets it. So I think that was part of the discussion behind that. I don't think we had a lot of dismay over the actual federal holidays.
So the original conversation was raised because when the calendar was put in front of us to approve it, it was looking like something from 1950 that had not necessarily been reevaluated, and that's partly because the federal holidays are that, right?
Right.
So that's where the tension comes, and that's where trying to make some shift and some change. You know, and a lot of people will say, well, you know, we shouldn't be making these big changes locally, these should come from the top down in the government, but things don't necessarily always work that way. So the idea was that the values and everything that we've set up with our anti-racism and equity policies weren't necessarily reflected there. So,
Suzanne, I think staff would support adding additional holidays to the federal holidays, as well as having floating holidays to make their choices. But the issue with the federal holidays is that because other institutions grant them, our staff have to use floating holidays if we're open, to take time off to take care of their kids, to do, you know, so there's a cost to the library being open during federal holidays. Staff have to use their floating holidays for that. So I think what staff is saying is, please give us the federal holidays so we can take care of our families and not work those days.
right.
And then use our floating holidays to observe the religious holidays or other circumstances, monthly day, other things that are important to us. I think if that was granted, you would have a very happy library staff. Now, if it's a community issue where you think the community would reject that, us being so called federal holidays and the four floating, then I think that should be addressed. If there are community members who feel our holiday schedule is not representing them, then I would say that makes sense. But honestly, this debate, I think, is very frustrating for our staff. We don't get it. We have expressed our wishes, and the idea of going back to the survey and going through this again, it just doesn't make sense to us. So I'm just being very blunt, since I'm not your director. What staff feel about this?
Well, I really appreciate hearing that. Can I ask you a follow-up question? So the six federal or local, state, or federal holidays, all six of those are granted to, like, so last time we had a conversation about the other people in the village, others like get these holidays, they get all six of these holidays?
I think Billy.
Not consistently. You don't want the six that are listed in the survey?
Yeah,
No, these are not all federal holidays. Lincoln's birthday is
right.
a state.
I would imagine that's.
National Day is kind of just Chicago or maybe Cook County. General election days, but anyway, Veterans Day and MLK Day are for sure. Oh, sorry, and President's Day. There's three in there that are for sure federal holidays.
Lori, when I first came on the board, I remember asking the question as to why are we closed early on a Friday evening? Or why are we closed on Sunday morning? And I think that the answer was basically that we realized that the library wasn't being used that much in those times. And I think that part of the discussion here is when should the library be open? Because we've got marginalized communities that probably need this space when other things are closed. But it seems to me that we should leave it to staff to make these kinds of decisions because we can't be open 24/7. And why are we closed? I love the idea of coming to the library after 6 o'clock on Friday when I was finished with my work week. The library wasn't open. So I asked why, because nobody else was here. And so I think that there are those very practical questions too. And I think that to your point, staff has already told us this is what they'd like. And I think that's pretty much the conversation. It's conversation stopper in a way.
When the second, I think it was the second proposal that was presented to us was on putting up, adding some other religious holidays and taking away the 4 or 3 of the 4 floating days, I think. And we came back and said, no, after researching what other places of work are doing to kind of try and address the way that holidays have been presented in these kind of majority culture sorts of ways. That taking away floating holidays was not good, right? Because people needed those to address the fact that we're still in this kind of place. So we we're like, yes, we'll add the holidays, and we don't want to take away the floating holidays. So we're not trying to take away floating holidays, and I think that's some of the narrative that's getting kind of out of control there.
I just think that was never a question. I think the board has made
That's
it
how
pretty
the-
clear. I think the board has repeatedly said, like, we were not looking to get rid of floating holidays.
Right, but that's what was presented to us, and we came back and said, no, we think that the floating holidays
Right, so
will still be there.
if there was an option, and that the board pretty resoundingly rejected that idea.
Right.
So I'm not sure why bringing it up again.
I don't think that's the issue. I think what I'm picking up on is the desire to cut federal holidays.
Oh my gosh, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay, well then if all we're talking about is 4 floating holidays, we have the federal holidays, then are we just talking about if we're adding any more holidays?
We already did add more holidays.
Well,
This was more an additive, and then to see, to your point, are there days that the community wishes we were open, that we're closed because historically we've been closed, that our staff doesn't mind it open. I think,
well, and
I've
then
never
let
been
me
taken away.
explain what I'm hearing is we added indigenous peoples, we added the day after Thanksgiving. What's still being discussed is whether we add Martin Luther King Day, whether we add President's Day, because there was debate about whether President's Day was something we should observe. So those are 2 federal holidays that are still being waived or not. Or are we
The
saying?
recommendation at that point was to add Martin Luther King Jr. Day. On that same recommendation was also Easter. And there was one that was suggesting, there were 2 options. I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry. But one had Easter and then also adding some other religious days and taking away the 4 floating holidays. To which we looked into and recommended no to the rest of the board. No, we shouldn't try and add a couple holidays, because it was adding another Christian holiday, 2 Muslim holidays and 2 Jewish holidays, but nothing outside of that, and taking away the floating. So then anybody who's Hindu or and would not have any ability to do that. So we're like, no. And one of the suggestions, one of the topics that came up early on when Colin was still on, was the idea of taking the religion out of the holidays.
Right.
And so that's one of the ideas that came forth. And Jocelyn brought up the statistics and the idea that, in springtime, there was a long period of time when staff didn't have any days off. So we were coming back and saying, is there some other way, some other day to recognize in springtime that helps
that can
change the configuration of what the calendar looks like? To which then staff was saying, we want the ones that are federal holidays because other things are closed and we need them. So that's one of the tensions, right? Is that the federal and the trickle down from power dynamic isn't gonna change right away, right? And wanting to like meet staff's needs to have the time off. And also wanting to be thinking in terms of like, how do we make these shifts so that it doesn't keep being reified in the same structures that kind of center the same people over and over again. And the other tension that Christina was articulating is the idea of the library being open for populations that need it. So it's a complex and nuanced conversation. It came up because we were asked to approve something that everything in my being was like, wait, what year is this? You know, so, but it also opened up to lots of wonderful information coming back from Jocelyn about, we hadn't recognized that there was this long period with no rain in spring. Really good to know.
Since I think, and Martin Luther King, MLK being in January, right, like does not actually solve that January to,
Right.
I mean, we should have, right? So it doesn't solve the January to May stretch, right? So and that's where the President's Day came in, and that's also in February. And so, I also remember like a hiccup that I hadn't thought about, which was even with the floating holidays, like if you have like, because it is a dominant culture concept, that if you have, for instance, Easter, and then everybody uses their floating holiday to take Easter off, and the people who don't celebrate Easter in stock are actually left. Yeah, right, during those holidays. So like I think that this whole conversation has actually brought up like a lot of different things that we haven't, thought of before.
Look, Laura, I want to just stop and say thank you for bringing up the staff's frustration in this, because I don't think, like thinking back on our conversations, I think we all understood what we were trying to do, but obviously we did not voice that correctly to the staff. They thought we were sitting here trying to take away.
Which is conversation. And people to talk to us.
Yeah, and therefore that introductory piece that you were talking about in whatever survey.
I agree with somewhat tabling this, or at least tabling this so that it's not a problem for staff, because right now I don't think this is staff's issue.
Well, I'm still struggling to know what is in question, because what I'm hearing you say is we accept the federal holidays, we accept the floating holidays. Are we still just trying to determine whether we're adding a spring holiday?
We're not taking away any holidays.
I would say, can we as a board next month look at just the federal holidays and make a decision on just those and get that solidified and like move that chunk out of our discussion? That seems to be the most painful point for our staff, is that we haven't made a decision on those.
Are you talking about adding or the existing ones that were already in existence?
The ones that are on this list, us saying yay or nay to those 6.
No, but it's not 6, because not all 6, not all 6 are federal, right?
Not all 6 are federal. I'm saying, let's
President's Day.
Question three, the list of local, state, and federal holidays that we don't use. Not all of them are federal. I think it's,
MLK, President's Day.
I'm not saying decide as a chunk. I'm saying, let's just decide on those 6.
Right.
Not as a chunk. We can look at it individually, but let's, instead of deciding like the whole calendar, can we just start with those so that staff can see, we're making some progress?
I understand, I just want to clarify that we're not even talking about all six, we're actually only talking about, right?
Three.
We're talking about three.
Three of those six are federal holidays.
Right.
Yeah, I got opinions on election day,
Yeah, right, me too, me
but
too.
them's my opinions. That's what I'm
I
saying.
have an opinion too, and I'll tell you right now. I'm fine with us being open on election day. I think election day as a holiday is the lowest hanging fruit in terms of civic engagement and does not help increase accessibility to voting. Along with many other things, it is a thing that is a waste of political capital and deliberative time.
I will ask Billy this question. Billy, do we allow people to leave work to go vote?
We have to, it's law.
It's law.
We have to, it's law.
I just want to make sure that you do know. As long as that is the case, then I don't
Yes,
think it necessarily needs to be an entire meeting.
and we go beyond the law. I think we offer 2 hours of voting leave without the restrictions that the state would put on it, of up to 2 hours paid. So
Thanks, Billy.
So change your mind through all 5 counts.
Okay, so I just, I want to take movement, we could take a vote on payday, since I think we had already reached agreement on that.
Right.
That's something that we're wanting to show movement and show.
Well, we can't have a vote on it tonight. It's something we can vote at a future meeting.
Yes,
So let's put it on the agenda, but that's done.
that's why I'm asking, can we put all of them on the agenda? Not all 6.
I will say, how about this?
Three on the agenda.
May I make a recommendation? No, I'm sorry, no. That for our next meeting, we will have a closing calendar that includes the entire slate of federal holidays, as well as, do we want to, with what we currently have as our calendar, and adding to that any currently omitted federal holidays. So the current one that we have previously approved with the additions of any currently omitted federal holidays, and we will have that for us at our next board meeting.
That we will vote on individually.
Yes. Well, as is,
Well, we vote on the calendar as a whole, but because they're including those 3 federal holidays.
I think, Suzanne, do you need to ask, like, if we vote for a day, are we also voting for Veterans Day?
Yes.
I will,
Only because if we haven't handled the rest of the conversation.
But the sticking point for the staff is that they cannot function in the community in which we live, where the rest of the community is closed, and their kids have nowhere to go. And
there are veterans in our community who will take offense at the fact that we are not closed in observance.
I'm not picking any particular day about this, I wasn't. That's why I was,
But
I mean,
it's,
it was just 2 separate days. I was just,
I understand that all 3 days have separate significance.
no, I'm just saying that adding 3 days may mean that we don't have room to have the rest of the conversation. And to look, and also,
I don't think that's the case, because we were already lower than the rest of the village on the days that we were offering. I'm not worried. If we were gonna do all 6, then yes, I would say this impacts the rest of the conversation. These 3, I don't think it will. What are we gonna do?
I was only trying to, Christina raised the issue of being closed and wanting to make sure that
And just, yeah.
the,
I think like the library to me has such an opportunity to set an example, and I think it is pushing against dominant culture, but I am hearing loud and clear the staff don't. This, so I'm just kind of like, I don't want to do a survey. And I'm comfortable moving forward, and I hope that this is the start of broader community discussion about these issues, because I think it's very important, but. I think it's also what we're up against with like the systems at large being what they are and yeah.
I think, first of all, I don't think this means we have to like chuck all the content that is in question 4 or the remaining pieces. But I'd like to give the staff the peace of mind that we heard what they asked for, which was
Absolutely.
the federal holidays. And I agree, Christina, it's not fun that we're having to roll ourselves in with the dominant culture that we don't always try to roll in with, but I feel like it's gonna sound like the most democratic answer ever, like, I feel like we do so much other really great stuff, pushing all the buttons and pushing all people, you know, making all the right people a little bit angry. That if the one thing we do that is in line with majority culture is to make our staff happier,
Right.
that's a trade-off I'm willing to make. With the caveat that we just decide we're going to review this more often.
And we absolutely want to make the staff happier. I mean, that
Yeah.
absolutely, our staff is our gem. I mean, we are the library we are because of them. So the question is just making our staff happier, like. And are we hearing, are we making all of the staff happier? Are we following? But if leadership feels like we are, then we need leadership.
When Lori said what she said, there was clapping and cheering over there. And it elicits clapping and cheering from that direction.
Yeah.
I'm going to.
Okay, so I'm sorry. President's Day is in February. I wanted to know this. I was just trying to look them up. I thought it's because I didn't grow up in this country that I did not know the answer.
It's between Lincoln's birthday and Washington.
And that is in February. It's in February, right? And
November 11th.
so I just. If you should. That's what I'm saying.
That's why I said we don't have to get rid of everything that's in question 4. Let's take the question 3 content off the table and get that
So
resolved.
I guess what is the hope with the survey? Like, what are we?
I don't think we can talk.
We appreciate all the work that went into getting the survey together, but we realized that that was maybe not.
I mean, I think the survey was really good when
words.
breaking apart what the staff for these, because
Yeah.
we were thinking of them as like a big giant pile of holidays and what are we gonna do, but this very succinctly divided it into.
Government holidays.
It showed where the priorities were by separating that into 2 different questions.
Okay, so I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that we're moving along. So our understanding is we can't move on any of this, it's not on our agenda. Next month, we're hoping to have an actual vote on the 3 federal holidays.
The calendar as it is with the addition of the 3 federal holidays, which would be
MLK, President's Day, and Veterans Day. President's Day, a little bit addresses the spring issue, but only by a couple of weeks, I think.
But I think,
Is that right?
But there was also, I think previously there was a gap between like January 1st and the
We
April.
didn't have that.
Because previously, like, there was no MLK either, and so we're.
So at least February to me is better than January 1st.
Yeah,
but then if we really want to reevaluate and we want to take a second look at the things, the content of question 4, or some of these other things that are not strictly in the federal holidays that the staff is most adamant and asked about.
Yeah,
Then we can do that.
no, sure.
Make a spring break.
I
Whatever.
was just hopeful that I was wrong about when President's Day was, and that it was later in the spring, it would address multiple issues at the same time.
While we're at it, we're gonna just move President's Day to like March.
Let's try to,
and, like,
let's
you know,
try to-
people park for President's Day, come back for President's Day.
Okay, so I appreciate that with the inclusion of MLK and President's Day, we will also be able to at least a little bit address the spring gap.
Which is the 14th of June.
What's Yeah.
Okay, so we're scrapping thing.
So yes, so what I'm hearing is
Much better.
yes, we are 86ing the survey. We are gonna move forward with the adoption of the federal calendar. Making with the other additional dates we have already previously approved. Because there are non-federal approved days that we have on our calendar. I want to make sure that it is clear that we are not going to do just the federal.
And no amendment or adjustment of the current allocation of floating home.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Applause.
Yeah,
I'm sorry that was.
I'm sorry, I did not sleep enough last night. I'm thinking it's not as quick as usual, but. Virginia, when you were talking about, I wasn't necessarily thinking, when I was saying a conversation, is because I wanted to make sure that staff heard us, what our intentions were.
Yeah, 'cause
And
I
that
agree.
that narrative was not
That was,
like getting confused.
that was my concern seeing the staff comments last time, is it felt like they were responding to something that we didn't intend. And I think that's why I proposed the survey, which, yeah, I'm really grateful for this conversation. I think it's a very important one to have. And we're gonna approve the schedule way sooner than we did last year. So like, there is that, like, we are still ahead of, I think, schedule there.
And they're getting a lot more.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
There's
this is
more
nice.
I can't wait to tell
Further
that
information.
tomorrow. Great news.
Are there any implications for the additional ones?
Well,
There's savings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you know, and then it still can leave open the question, the spring question, and I think that is an important point, Virginia, that, you know, like. Approving this doesn't take away the opportunity to add something else, and I think we got a little bit. Caught with that, with the, you know, with the idea of like, if we give this, then we have to take away. Absolutely do not want to take away floating holidays, that is heading the wrong.
I think we
direction.
were trying to chew too much all at once. I think as a board, this is a lesson to us that when we do run up against things like this that are exceedingly complicated, that we try to be more cognizant about cutting it up into smaller pegs. And also that if we ask leadership to take something back to the staff, that we help staff, like, explaining why we're asking this question, not just, hey, sit down, defend your vacation days. But like, we're asking this because we'd like to know more time off and we just want to know where to stick it on the calendar. I think we would have had a very different response had we asked leadership to ask that kind of question versus we just kind of like threw a calendar at them for like, get feedback. I think we could have been more pointed in.
I don't think we quite did that.
No, I'm being a little.
Let's focus on forward steps at this point. And I think we have a plan for what will be on our agenda for next month. And going forward, and we'll just have to make sure that this is part of our allotment of time as we review and as we bring this around again. Thank you, everyone. We will move on to new business policy review. We have on page 60. Just got new classes. Reciprocal borrower benefits policy.
Yeah, there are just minor changes to both of these policies, that are, noted in the comments. Changing fines to fees, because that's the language we use, things like that. There's nothing substantive really. I think there's some words in here.
Any questions? Is there a motion to approve?
So,
Is there seconded? Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? It is approved. Staff library cards policy.
Same thing.
Same thing.
Exercise.
Yeah. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? It is approved. And that concludes our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.
Yeah.
I need to be a little louder and faster. I feel like. I am forever. Yeah. That's right. So.
I think that's very good. Yeah, that's very good.
I really appreciate it. I love the Trustees Day. Other people. Like the accolades, but I Thank you.